They called it a fairy tale. My wedding to Daniel was the kind of story people whispered about at family dinners and envied at small-town gatherings. He stood tall, handsome, and confident. Every smile timed as if the universe itself had rehearsed him. When I walked down the aisle, his eyes locked onto me with such intensity that I believed, truly believed, that I was the center of his world. Our first years together were framed in golden light. Dinners filled with laughter, flowers on anniversaries, his gentle hand always resting on the small of my back. To everyone else, Daniel was the ideal husband. Reliable, attentive, charming. And to me, at least in those early days, he was the embodiment of safety. But perfection has a strange way of crumbling quietly, like wallpaper peeling behind heavy furniture. It doesn't collapse all at once, it whispers. I noticed it first in little lies. A late meeting that ended earlier than he claimed. A receipt tucked into his pocket for a restaurant he swore he hadn't visited. At first I brushed them off. Everyone misremembers details, don't they? Yet the cracks widened. Sometimes his eyes went cold, flat, empty, almost unrecognizable. He would catch me watching him, then smile too quickly, too perfectly, as if putting on a mask he had forgotten to wear. "Emma," he'd say softly, tilting his head, "you worry too much. You're imagining things." But I wasn't. I could feel it in my chest when I lay awake at night, staring at the man beside me, wondering who he really was when the world wasn't watching. One evening, I walked past his study and found the door slightly ajar. He sat inside, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and sharp, nothing like the soothing tone he used with me. When I pushed the door open, he startled, then quickly ended the call. "Work," he said too quickly. "Just work." The way his hand gripped the phone made my stomach twist. For the first time, I didn't believe him. And once doubt takes root in a marriage, it grows like ivy, curling into every corner. I told myself I'd let it go. But later that night, when his phone buzzed again and he slipped into the hallway, my heart whispered the truth. Something was very, very wrong. And that was only the beginning. Sleep never came easily after that night. I found myself wandering the hallways of our house, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the wooden stairs, the silence that pressed too heavily against the walls. Daniel slept soundly, as if no secrets lived inside him, but I couldn't shake the image of his tightened grip on that phone. Days later, when he left for work earlier than usual, I went into his study. The room smelled faintly of leather and cologne, everything perfectly organized, just like him. But perfection can be a mask, and I was determined to peel it away. I opened the bottom drawer of his desk, the one he rarely touched. Buried beneath neat stacks of paperwork was a phone I had never seen before. Sleek, black, unmarked. My pulse hammered in my ears as I unlocked it. No passcode required. The screen lit up instantly as though waiting for me. Dozens of messages filled the screen. Short, cryptic phrases. "Not tonight. She suspects nothing. Wait until it's clear." My throat tightened. None of them carried names. Only numbers I didn't recognize. Every word felt like a thread pulling me deeper into a web I didn't understand. The door creaked behind me. "Emma?" Daniel's voice cut through the silence. I froze, the phone trembling in my hands. He stepped closer, eyes narrowing just enough before his expression softened into a practiced smile. "Why are you in here?" I swallowed hard. "This isn't your phone, Daniel." "Whose is it?" He chuckled lightly, too lightly. "It's a work device. Confidential clients. I should have told you, but I didn't want to drag you into business matters." His words rolled off his tongue, like lines memorized in advance. "Then why the messages?" My voice cracked. "Why hide it?" He sighed, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Emma, you're tired. You've been stressed. You're reading into things. I promise there's nothing to worry about." But I wasn't convinced. His tone was too smooth, his gaze too steady. I could feel the lie slithering between us, poisoning the vows we once cherished. That night, lying awake beside him, I kept replaying those messages. She suspects nothing. Who was she? And what was it I wasn't supposed to know? The shadows in our marriage were no longer invisible. They had names hidden in numbers waiting to speak. And I wasn't going to stop until I found them. The messages haunted me, even when I tried to bury them beneath daily routines. folding laundry, making dinner, smiling at neighbors. Those words echoed in my head. She suspects nothing. Soon, the late-night calls began. At first, it was just once or twice a week, Daniel's voice low in the hallway, carrying a tone sharper than I had ever heard. Then it became routine. The phone vibrating at midnight, his body slipping out of bed, his shadow stretching across the walls as he left the room. When I asked, his answers were rehearsed. "Clients overseas," he'd say, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "Time zones are complicated." But his eyes never met mine when he said it. The absences followed. Business trips extended without notice, meetings that ran late but left no trace in his calendar. The scent of unfamiliar perfume clung to his shirt sometimes, faint but undeniable. I told myself it could be coincidence, that I was imagining things just as he insisted. But suspicion has a way of clawing at your chest until you can't breathe. One evening I couldn't hold it in any longer. He walked through the door, jacket slung carelessly over his arm, phone clutched tight in his hand. "Daniel," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "Who are you talking to at night?" "Who's calling you?" He paused, then smiled that same too-perfect smile. "Emma, we've been over this. Clients, work, you know how demanding it can be." "I'm not stupid," I whispered. "There's someone else." I can feel it, his smile faded. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Listen to yourself. You're paranoid. You're inventing problems because you can't handle stress. Do you even hear how irrational you sound?" The room spun around me. His words hit like daggers, twisting doubt into my mind. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe the whispers in my head weren't real. But deep inside, something resisted. A quiet voice reminding me of the phone in the drawer, the perfume on his shirt, the late-night shadows creeping across the hallway. Still, his conviction made me falter. By the end of the night, I found myself apologizing, though I couldn't remember why. And as he pulled me into his arms, whispering reassurances, I caught sight of his jacket draped on the chair. In the pocket, just barely visible, was the corner of a photograph. Something told me that picture would reveal more than he ever wanted me to know. I couldn't shake the glimpse of that photograph. It called to me through the night, tugging at my thoughts until sleep became impossible. When Daniel left the next morning, briefcase in hand and a polished kiss on my cheek, I waited only minutes before moving toward the jacket he had left draped over the chair. My fingers trembled as I reached into the pocket. The photograph slid free, creased at the edges, faintly yellowed with time. My breath caught. Daniel stood in the center of the frame, younger but unmistakable, his arm wrapped tightly around a woman I had never seen before. Her smile was wide, radiant, her hand resting possessively on his chest. They looked more than close. They looked entwined, as though no space had ever existed between them. I stared at her face, searching for familiarity, but she was a stranger who once owned the warmth I thought was mine. When Daniel came home that evening, I had already placed the photo on the dining table. He stopped in his tracks the moment he saw it. His expression flickered, shock, recognition, then a swift mask of calm. "Where did you find that?" His voice was steady, too steady. "In your pocket," I said, my throat tight. "Who is she?" He chuckled, dismissive, running a hand through his hair. "An old friend. Years ago." "It's nothing, Emma. You're making it into something it's not. Friends don't hold each other like that," I whispered. He crossed the room, picking up the photograph before I could snatch it back. His eyes darkened. "You're digging where you shouldn't. It's the past. Let it go." The way he slipped the photo into his wallet made my stomach churn. It wasn't nothing, not to him. And the smoothness of his response, the calm dismissal, only deepened my unease. That night, as he drifted off beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Questions gnawed at me. Who was she? Why had he hidden her? And why did I feel as though the woman in that photograph was not just part of his past, but a shadow bleeding into our present? I didn't know it then, but Daniel was only beginning to turn the knife. After the photograph, something in Daniel shifted. Or maybe it was me. Maybe seeing that woman's face had stripped away the illusions I'd been clinging to. Either way, the air in our home thickened. Every conversation carried hidden daggers. Every silence stretched like barbed wire between us. Daniel grew colder but never loud. That was the cruelty of it. He didn't rage or scream. He dismantled me with precision, one word at a time. When I tried to bring up the photo again, he sighed heavily, shaking his head as though I were a child. "Emma, you're exhausting yourself. You invent stories in your head and then you blame me for them. Do you even hear how irrational you sound?" The way he spoke, calm and measured, made me doubt the ground beneath my feet. At night, our bedroom, once a place of warmth, turned into a battleground. He would roll away from me, his back like a wall of ice. When I asked if something was wrong, he would mutter, "You're imagining problems again," before flicking off the lamp, leaving me in darkness, both literal and emotional. Sometimes he wouldn't answer at all. The silence was worse than words. It pressed against me, making me feel small, unwanted, paranoid. I found myself apologizing just to fill the void. But the apologies only seemed to please him. He'd brush my cheek afterward, whispering, "That's better," like rewarding a child who finally behaved. And yet when friends visited, he transformed. The charming, attentive husband returned, pouring wine, telling jokes, touching my hand with performative tenderness. I'd catch his eyes across the table, daring me to speak. Knowing no one would believe me if I did, I began to wonder if I was losing myself entirely. Was I imagining the late-night calls? The lies, the photograph? No, the evidence was there. But his words twisted around my memories until I couldn't trust my own mind. One evening, after another pointless argument where he turned my accusations back on me, I locked myself in the bathroom. Staring into the mirror, I hardly recognized the woman looking back. Eyes hollow, lips trembling, voice caught between fear and rage. I knew I couldn't keep unraveling like this. If I wanted the truth, I'd have to find it outside of his control. And soon, a chance encounter would open the door to secrets Daniel thought he'd buried forever. I thought I was losing myself inside Daniel's mind, games until fate handed me something he couldn't control. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. I'd forced myself out of the house, hoping that the bustle of town might quiet the storm in my head. At a small cafe, I ran into Margaret, an old neighbor from years ago. She greeted me warmly, her eyes lighting up with recognition. "It's been so long, Emma," she said, squeezing my hand. Then, glancing at my wedding ring, she added with a smile, "So you married Daniel." The way she said it made my stomach knot. "You know him?" I asked carefully. Her smile faltered. "Of course. Everyone knew him back then. After what happened," she trailed off, suddenly guarded. "What happened?" I pressed, my pulse quickening. Margaret hesitated, then leaned closer. "His wife." "His first wife." "You didn't know?" The words hit me like a blow. My chest tightened, breath shallow. "No, he told me he'd never been married before." Her face softened with pity. "I'm sorry, Emma. I shouldn't have said anything. But yes, he was married. Beautiful young woman. Died tragically. People still whisper about it." The cafe seemed to blur around me. A ringing filled my ears as if the whole world had tilted off balance. Daniel had lied, not about something small, but about an entire marriage, a death, a ghost that still lingered. That evening, I sat across from him at dinner, my fork untouched, my heart pounding with questions. His face was calm as ever, his conversation smooth, but all I could see was Margaret's expression and the weight behind her words. Finally, I asked, my voice trembling, "Daniel, were you married before me?" His hand froze mid-air. For the briefest second, something flickered in his eyes, anger, fear, maybe both. Then he smiled, setting his fork down. "Who told you that nonsense?" "So it isn't true," I whispered. "Emma, people love gossip. Don't let their poison into our marriage." His tone was soothing, but his gaze was sharp, unblinking. I nodded, pretending to let it go. But inside, my world had already cracked open. If Margaret was right, and I knew she was, then I had married a man whose past was not just secret, but stained with tragedy, and I needed to know exactly how deep that stain went, Margaret's. Words refused to leave me. They echoed through every moment of silence, wrapping around my thoughts like a noose. If Daniel had lied about something so monumental, what else had he buried? I waited until he left for another so-called late-night meeting. Then I went searching. His study had always been off limits, but I no longer cared. I opened drawers, sifted through files, And finally, tucked beneath stacks of old invoices, I found a battered envelope. Inside were newspaper clippings. My hands shook as I unfolded them. Local woman found dead in home. Husband questioned in mysterious. Tragedy. Case closed, no charges filed, the RCI. Black and white photographs showed her face. The same woman from the photograph I'd found in his pocket. Her name was Claire. She was beautiful, young, vibrant, and gone. I scanned the articles, my chest tightening with every line. She had died suddenly, under suspicious circumstances. A fall down the stairs, they claimed. But neighbors had reported hearing arguments, raised voices, the sound of something breaking just days before her death. My blood ran cold. The eerie details mirrored my own life. The silence, the gaslighting, the sharp words behind closed doors. I felt as though I was reading a prophecy of my own future. When Daniel came home, I quickly hid the envelope back where I had found it. He walked in, tie loosened, eyes narrowing as he studied me. "You look pale," he said softly, almost mockingly. "Are you feeling all right?" I forced a smile, praying he couldn't hear the tremor in my voice. "Just tired." He brushed my cheek with the back of his hand, lingering longer than necessary. "You really should rest more. You overthink things." I wanted to scream, to demand the truth, but fear glued my tongue in place. Instead, I sat quietly through dinner. The taste of food like ash in my mouth. That night, lying in the dark beside him, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living in Claire's shadow, that her death wasn't an accident, and that I was next in line. If I was going to survive, I needed proof. Proof stronger than old clippings. Proof he couldn't twist into lies. And I knew exactly how I would get it. The clippings burned in my mind like fire I couldn't put out. Every smile Daniel gave me, every gentle touch felt like camouflage for something darker. I needed proof. Not whispers, not suspicions, not shadows of the past. Real proof. So I set a trap. I bought a small recorder, the kind you could slip into a pocket without notice. One evening after dinner, I tucked it beneath the cushions of the living room sofa, its red light hidden by fabric. My pulse raced as Daniel sat across from me, glass of whiskey in hand. I started small. "I saw Margaret today," I said, my voice careful. "She mentioned your first wife." The glass paused mid-air. His jaw tightened. "Claire," he said flatly, as if the name itself tasted bitter. "She died tragically, didn't she?" I pressed. His eyes locked on mine, sharp as knives. "You shouldn't dig where you don't belong." Something in me snapped. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you lie?" That's when the mask cracked. His voice rose, sharp and venomous. "Because it's none of your damn business. You think you know what happened? You don't. She pushed me, Emma. She made my life hell. She destroyed everything, and she got what she deserved." The words tumbled out, twisted with rage. My heart pounded as the recorder captured every syllable. I held my breath, afraid he'd notice the trembling in my hands. "Daniel," I whispered, "are you saying—" He cut me off, leaning forward, eyes wild. "Don't twist my words. You've always been dramatic. You want to believe I'm some monster, don't you? Maybe you're the problem, Emma. Maybe you'll end up just like her if you keep pushing me." The silence that followed was suffocating. My throat went dry, but I forced a nod, pretending submission. Later, when he finally stormed off to his study, I retrieved the recorder with shaking hands. The device felt heavier than iron, the words inside it toxic. I had what I needed, but now I understood the risk. Daniel wasn't just hiding secrets. He was dangerous, and if he suspected what I had done, I knew he wouldn't hesitate to silence me too. The recorder became my lifeline, hidden deep in a drawer where Daniel would never look. But knowing I had his confession didn't make me safer. It made me more afraid. Every time his eyes lingered too long, I wondered if he could sense the betrayal pulsing inside me. It happened one night after another carefully controlled dinner. I pushed too hard, asking again about Claire, about the arguments their neighbors had overheard. His hand froze around his fork. Then without warning, he slammed it onto the table, the sharp sound cracking through the room like thunder. "You don't know when to stop," he shouted, his face twisted with fury I'd never seen so nakedly before. I stood, my own voice shaking. "I deserve the truth, Daniel. You can't keep lying to me." In 2 strides, he was in front of me. His hand gripped my arm so tightly I cried out, the pain searing. You think you can demand things from me? He hissed. You think you're stronger than me? You're nothing without me, Emma. When he shoved me back, I lost my balance and hit the edge of the table. The world blurred, stars exploding in my vision. For a moment, I thought I might not get up at all. He froze, staring at me sprawled on the floor, chest heaving. Then, as if a switch flipped, his voice softened. Look what you made me do. If you had just stopped, none of this would happen. Tears burned in my eyes as I crawled away from him, clutching my side. I nodded, pretending to accept his twisted logic, because survival demanded it. But in that moment, something inside me shattered. I could no longer pretend this was a marriage. It was a cage. When he finally left the house for another meeting, I pulled myself together, wincing with every movement. With trembling hands, I dialed a number I had found days earlier, a detective whose name kept surfacing in articles about Claire's death. When he answered, I whispered, "My name is Emma. I think my husband killed his first wife, and I think he's going to kill me too." For the first time in months, I felt a spark of something I thought I'd lost. Hope, but involving someone else meant the game was no longer hidden, and Daniel never forgave betrayal. The detective, Michael Hayes, had a voice that carried both weariness and authority. When we met in the dim light of his office, the stale scent of old files and black coffee hung heavy in the air. My body still ached from Daniel's last outburst, but the tremor in my hands came less from pain than from dread of what I was about to hear. Hayes folded his hands over a stack of folders. Emma, you need to prepare yourself. What I'm about to show you, it isn't just about Daniel's past. It's about you too. I felt my breath catch. About me? He slid a folder across the desk. Inside were photographs, bank records, and transcripts. One image seared into me. Daniel's first wife, Claire, smiling in a picture that looked almost staged, before the headline beneath it declared her death an accident. It wasn't, Hayes said firmly. We've gathered evidence suggesting Daniel staged the whole thing. He manipulated the crime scene to look like a fall, and he walked away clean. My stomach lurched. You mean he killed her? Hayes nodded grimly. And it doesn't stop there. Daniel has been running financial schemes for years. Shell companies, false investments, money laundering hidden beneath charm. And here's where it connects to you. He flipped to another page. My name was there, signed neatly on dotted lines, I remembered. Consent forms, tax filings, documents Daniel had asked me to sign with a smile and a kiss. My chest tightened. He used me. You were the perfect cover, Hayes said softly. An innocent wife fronting paperwork without question. You may have unknowingly helped him hide thousands. The office felt colder, the walls pressing in. I thought of every vow Daniel had spoken. Every night he whispered promises of forever. Each word now dripped with venom, a script rehearsed for manipulation. I built my life on a lie, I whispered, the truth cutting deeper than any bruise he'd left. Hayes leaned closer. Emma, you're in danger. He suspects you've grown suspicious. If he realizes you've come to me, I know, I said quickly, my voice steadier than I felt. But I can't keep living like this. For the first time, a plan began to form. Not just survival, but exposure. The truth had shattered everything I believed in. Now, I needed to use it to break him. The knowledge from Detective Hayes had cracked my world wide open. But nothing prepared me for the storm that followed. I returned home that evening with my heartbeat drumming against my ribs, every shadow in the house carrying menace. Daniel's charm had always cloaked his cruelty, but now I could see it for what it was, masking a predator cornered. He was waiting, sitting in the living room, glass of whiskey in hand, his posture too casual, eyes glinting like shards of ice. You've been busy, Emma, he said smoothly, though his voice carried an edge. Meeting with detectives, digging through my past. Did you think I wouldn't find out? My throat tightened. You lied to me. You killed her. You used me. For a moment, silence hung between us, heavy as a noose. Then his lips curved into a smile that chilled me. I didn't use you, Emma. You were part of me. My perfect partner. But partners who can't be trusted. He set the glass down with a soft click. They don't last long. Narration blurred into the chaos of the moment. He lunged, grabbing my wrist, his grip iron. I stumbled back, the room spinning. For the first time, I saw no pretense, no mask, only the monster Hayes had warned me about. "Daniel, stop!" I shouted, struggling. "It's over. They know everything. Then I'll make sure you don't live to testify," he hissed, shoving me hard against the wall. The world snapped into sharp fragments, the crack of plaster behind me, the sting in my shoulder, the metallic taste of fear flooding my mouth. Yet beneath the terror, something inside me solidified. I was done being the victim. My eyes flicked to the small recorder I had hidden earlier, still running from my pocket. His words, the threat, the admission, every vile syllable was captured. "Daniel," I said, forcing steadiness into my voice. "Listen carefully. You've already lost." He froze for half a second, confusion flashing before rage took over. He reached for me again, but headlights cut across the window. Detective Hayes' car. Sirens followed, slicing through the night. Daniel's mask cracked. For the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. He darted toward the back door, but Hayes and 2 officers were already inside, guns raised, shouts echoing. Pinned in the chaos, Daniel's gaze found mine one last time, and then in a final act of betrayal, he spat out words meant to wound deeper than any blow. "You were never my love, Emma. You were my cover." The words struck harder than his hands ever had. As officers dragged him away, I stood trembling, alive yet hollow. The vows we once spoke, for better, for worse, had become shackles. Now I was free, but forever scarred.